Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the OnePlus 8T and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024. Now, the thing I will definitely tell you about this particular phone is that for one, there's still a lot of capability behind this particular device. It may not be perfect and there might be like small little issues going on with this particular phone when it comes down to it, but I still think the OnePlus 8T is still an interesting phone when it comes down to it. There's definitely way better phones I'd recommend buying than this thing though, and if you want to pick up those ones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, another thing I will tell you about the OnePlus 8T, this was one of those times where OnePlus would give the kind of like a little like mini successor coming from its, for that, particular year. It's been a minute since they've done this. I don't think they did this one, the OnePlus 11. They may have done it, I don't remember. With the OnePlus 8T, this particular phone came out on the later half of 2020. So it came out in October of 2020. And on the front of this particular phone, you're basically getting the 6.55-inch fluid AMOLED display. And the thing I really liked about this particular panel was that it was a 120 Hz display and it was a fluid AMOLED display and it looked pretty good for the most part. Like I actually liked these particular panels a lot and the way it looked is still looking very, very good for the most part. The thing with this particular panel on top of that is that when you're actually looking at it, it's a curved display a little bit and it actually looks very nice. And that's something I actually like a lot about this particular device. And if I'm going through and getting a device like this, it's a very, very nice looking panel. And I'm a humongous fan of the way this particular panel looks like on the front. On the sides, again, a little bit of an interesting thing here too, because you're basically getting these curved sides a little bit on this particular phone. The rest of the phone though is pretty slim. It feels really, really good, which is something that I actually like a lot about this particular device. On top of that, on the bottom side, you are getting a USB Type-C port. So this is something that's actually really nice going on for this particular device too, because again, you can just plug in a USB-C accessory and kind of move on with your life. On the back side, you're getting this like frosted glass back kind of thing. And it is actually a really, really nice back to have inside of this type of phone. So again, I like these types of things. I love being able to go through and just, have a frosted glass back like this. And that is essentially what's going on with this particular phone. So that in and of itself is another very, very nice thing going on for this particular phone. And overall, the build quality of this, phone still feels and looks very, very good. And there's still a lot of things to love about this particular phone. However, there are a few things that this phone is lacking in that a majority of phones have nowadays. And it's kind of weird this one didn't even have it. There's no IP certification on this phone. There might be some water resistance. Like if you dip this thing in water, it's probably going to be okay. But there isn't really any, water resistance, no IP certification on this phone, which is in and of itself kind of weird. And there's no wireless charging or reverse wireless charging on this phone either. So those two things are very, very weird to be missing out on in a phone in 2024. Yeah, again, back in 2020, maybe that was okay. But in 2024, it's kind of like a necessity to need those things. And it is very, very weird that we didn't have those things, as of this point. So keep it in mind. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but it is a big deal probably for a lot of people. And it is a big deal for me, to be honest. So that kind of covers it up there for the most part. Now, moving on, the price of this thing, when it came out, it was fairly expensive. Nowadays, it actually isn't as expensive as you might think. And that is something that's actually really nice. It's several $100s cheaper than when it first came out with. You can probably buy this thing for like $100 and like something dollars in the used market. So it really is not that, it's not that expensive of a phone anymore. So if you're planning on buying this phone now, the main appealing thing about this particular phone is that it is a fairly cheap device, and that is something I like a lot about these types of phones. Like if I'm going through and buying any sort of device, I like the fact that this phone is going to be giving me that type of capability of being like a fairly cheap phone that I can go ahead and buy. So this in and of itself from that specific perspective gets a thumbs up for me for sure. Now from the camera side, this phone on the back side was giving you this like quadruple camera setup in a way. So it's giving you a 48 megapixel wide angle lens, 16 megapixel ultra wide camera, 5 megapixel macro lens, and then a 2 megapixel monochrome camera. Then you're also getting a 16 megapixel wide angle camera on the front. Now, the thing I like a lot about this particular camera is that, it's a good camera that does a good job with what you're going to do with it. 4K at 60 on the back, but only 1080p at 30 on the front. And just that in and of itself is already kind of like somewhat of a lackluster type of camera and a lackluster type of lens. If you're going through and getting any sort of camera out there, you probably would expect it to be giving you a better job and better experience when it came down to it. And I will tell you with this particular phone, it's, pretty much like your average camera. It's kind of the best way to describe it. It is essentially what you'd expect on a majority of other phones that you're probably going to be getting. It's an average type of lens, and that's just the way it goes. Is it terrible? No, it's not a terrible camera, but, compared to phones nowadays, it really isn't that great. A majority of phones are going to be giving you 8K capability. And when you take a look at even other phones that came out in 2020, like the Samsung Galaxy S20, like the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro, those phones are going to be giving you significantly better cameras than this thing. So I would hate for you to go ahead and buy a phone like the OnePlus 8T and have it already give you a pretty weird experience and not give you that great of an experience in terms of, the camera. So now moving on with the cameras, another big thing with the OnePlus 8T is its software, or maybe the lack thereof. This particular phone, as you may have seen, is not going to be lasting forever, and it already is not getting the next couple versions of Android. So as far as we know right now, it is on Android 14, which is actually pretty cool. But beyond that, it's not really going to be getting any more. Android versions as far as we know, which again is totally okay. It is somewhat understandable for that point. But if you're wanting the longer lasting, OnePlus, phone, you're going to have to go for one of the newer ones that have came out this year. If you're trying to go for the ones that have came out last year, like, the year even before that, those are going to be fine. But if you're trying to get a device that is going to be, still be supported with software and all those things, you're going to have to go through and get, one of the newer ones. The biggest problem I would say with the OnePlus 8T is the fact that these particular phones are basically done getting software updates. But Android 14, the current version of Android it's on, is still actually very good. I'm very happy and, very appreciative of the way these particular phones have held up and have held up throughout the last couple of years in most ways. But in this way, I will tell you from the performance side, from the software side, it is good for now, but it's not really going to be lasting that much longer as far as we can tell from here. So that right there's another big thing to kind of keep in mind. On top of that, another big thing is its performance. It was rocking basically the best chips that you could find inside of a phone at that moment. So it was giving you that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset inside with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. The thing I will tell you about this particular phone's performance as of this point is that it is pretty much what you expect from a particular device. For a 2020 phone, it is giving you like pretty decent performance, and that's something that is pretty impressive for these types of devices. The fact that you can basically buy these phones and basically be able to get phones that are going to be giving you a pretty solid experience and pretty solid software and everything across the board. So with this particular phone, for basic applications and big applications, things like that, this is going to be perfectly fine, probably for a vast majority of people. It's definitely not going to be perfect, but I would probably argue for a lot of people, you're probably going to be okay with this type of performance for a 2020 device. But the big thing to keep in mind is that when you're getting a device like this one with, the OnePlus 8T, you're going to be getting this particular device that's going to be older, that's going to be, maybe not the best one anymore, and it is definitely going to be showing its age. When you compare this phone against like the OnePlus 12 or something, it's definitely going to be showing its age. But if you're comparing this against other 2020 phones, it's going to be fairly okay for the most part, which I think is actually pretty decent. So from that side, that kind of covers it up here as well. Now, for, battery life wise, another good thing going on for this phone, it had a pretty big size 4500 mAh battery, which that in and of itself was actually another very, very nice thing going on for this particular device when it comes down to it. So overall, what I'll definitely tell you, I definitely do like the way this particular device, came out in 2020. And I think for the most part, it was a good phone. But the problem now is that it probably isn't worth buying anymore. I don't really think this is a device I'd recommend any single person to buy. And there's way more reasons why you should go ahead and buy a phone that's still supported with software that's basically still good. Like the OnePlus 12, those ones are probably going to be better overall than something like these particular devices when it comes down to it. So for the most part, that kind of covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.